Welcome back to our Steven. I'm your host, Steven, and this audio has already been recorded for quality assurance, and today, from embarrassing a higher-up, listening to an army general, and giving the boss what he wants, we've got some great malicious compliance stories, all starting with a post titled, "If you won't ship to me because my drive is less than an hour, then I'll make it an hour." I work from home for a company that makes software for mobile devices. Of course, a lot of the work I do requires having the physical devices. If I needed a specific one, I would put in a request and they would ship it to me. However, recently one of my requests to ship it was denied, and I was told that I would have to pick it up. Their reasoning? I live within an hour of the office, so I'm expected to come in to get them myself. The problem is, if you look up the drive on Google Maps, it does take under an hour. Just barely, but only if you look it up at like 2 in the afternoon, or in the middle of the night when no one is driving. If you look it up during normal commuting time, it's never less than that. I'm writing this at 7 a.m. and it's at 1:15. In 30 to 45 minutes, it's gonna be even worse. I asked if I could just pay for shipping myself, since it would be cheaper for me to do that than pay for gas and parking. Nope, gotta come in. So now I come in. I take lunch and then head in at 1 in the afternoon. I get what I need and immediately leave. It takes me just under 2 hours total, and because I'm only running in for a few minutes, I can leave my car in front of the building and not have to buy parking. 2 hours that I would normally spend doing work, I'm now spending in my car. For some reason, I'm now back on the approved list for shipping. I kind of wish that OP could have detailed a little bit more after the fact of doing this a few times and the company realizing, why is this person off for 2 hours every time they have to get something, and kind of that exchange that they must have had with OP. I think it's kind of annoying in general to have like an arbitrary 1 hour distance rule, because what is the reasonable cutoff? If it takes one person 55 minutes to get to the office, that's deemed close enough? What if it's 57 or 58 minutes? Is that close enough? Like, I get they're trying to save money and all, but it should just be a reasonable mileage requirement. A user named rDragonThunderzord left a comment saying, "Kind of wild to have to pay for shipping from your own company. Don't offer to do crap like this again, please. I don't know if you can charge the mileage in this situation, but you should super look into it." The OP responded, "If I was gonna have to spend money, I'd rather spend $15 on shipping and not leave my house than $30 on gas and parking and spending 2 hours in the car." That said, if you're stuck somewhere for the next 2 hours yourself and you want to listen to some more malicious compliance stories, it would be awesome if you could hit those like or subscribe buttons down below. Our next story is, what list? So many years back, I was a buyer and material controller for a company that produced very specialized tech. As happens with such companies, we were bought by a large company in our field and merged with another similar company the big guys had bought the year before. Much drama there, but not this drama. It finally came time for our production department in our own building to be closed, and everything moved to the big company's facility. The entirety of our stocks and equipment was cherry-picked for what Big Co wanted transferred, and the rest was written off. Stock was transferred, signed out from our shop floor, and counted into theirs, but when it came to the giant pile of written-off assets, test gear, and other tooling, I was told specifically not to bother listing any of it, and they would sort everything at their facility, scrap what they didn't want, and keep any tool or test kit that passed their higher standards. So I didn't, and then the queries rolled in. When all the test gear came down, did they take that multimeter? Response of, no idea. Well, did the screwdriver set come here? Can't give you any helpful info, sorry. What happened to the racking? And the only truthful answer I could give was that when the transport came up to collect the reject pile, the guys took everything that was still on the shop floor, and as I'd been specifically instructed to no longer track or control the movement of any of that expensive gear, I hadn't. I had specifically not noticed if any staff or engineers dropped by to see the sad end of our production floor, and I made a point to not see them walking off with anything. I'll be honest when I say that I can't feel too bad for Bigco that bought two other companies, merged them in, and then went to the company and said, here's what we want, any other stock, just, I don't know, put it in a pile, don't track it, we'll just bring a forklift and come scoop it up later. And then inevitably, stuff from that pile goes missing. I mean, they weren't tracking it. You can't tell this company that's shutting down, mix it all up in a pile and we'll come by and grab it later, and then after the fact, start asking for something by name. A user named MadWolf64 left a comment saying, did you also see if you needed any items for yourself? You definitely did not see any items, which found an invisible path to your garage. The OP responded, well, now, Our next story is, a stupid policy was formed as an overcorrection. I was written up for enforcing it. A few years back, I was a team lead in a call center for a bank. Our building was secure, but policy required any personal information for ourselves or customers to be locked up, along with obvious things like passwords, anytime we weren't at our desks. A separate compliance group would do random desk checks periodically, and violations would result in a write-up for the individual, which also rolled up to leadership. Us team leads were responsible for completing the checks and were frustrated despite our being the ones responsible for the nightly desk checks. One of my peers had the suggestion that no personal information, including photos, knickknacks, and that sort of thing, should be allowed out, except for the small shelf everyone had in their cubicle. The person making the suggestion was a friend and was one of the closers who had to do these checks on a regular basis. I was not, and only had to do these on weekends. I said something to the effect of, that's the dumbest freaking thing I've ever heard. That's an overcorrection, and no one is going to follow the policy, and it's just making our jobs more difficult. I was written up the next day by my boss, who wasn't there, as her boss was part of that discussion and wanted me disciplined. I observed nearly no one outside of my team was complying by their ridiculous policy. That Saturday, when it was my turn for desk checks, I wrote a detailed breakdown of every single violation. There were dozens. I kept my feelings on the policy out and stuck to the facts. Monday, I was put on a formal warning. That manager wondered why everyone hated her, wasn't sad when she left, or empathized when she was laid off. Well, once again, I know it's not really relevant to the story itself, but I would have loved to have learned and heard a little bit more about that manager getting laid off. I mean, I guess really like the fallout of it all. What OP did worked, and it clearly annoyed everybody and ruffled some feathers, but I'd love to know why that crappy manager got fired in the end. A user named Shadow Dragon left a comment saying, sounds like you need to take that formal warning along with a copy of the stupid policy to HR and tell them that you're not taking kindly to being written up for checks notes following company policy. The OP responded, this was all years ago, but another post from the sub came up in my feed and reminded me of this incident. Previous contact with HR about inconsistent application of company or department policy didn't get me anywhere, and I didn't have the energy to try again. Had it led to termination, I'd have probably explored my options, but it didn't come to that. Another user named Natasha Overworld left a comment saying, written up for what? Saying it was the dumbest freaking thing? Like, did your manager think she was a kindergarten teacher? The OP responded, in her defense, for the first one, the site manager pressured her to do something. I was hurt by the whole thing because I thought it was a safe space to be frank. I was the most senior of my peers but one, knew the job better than all of them, and had a great rapport with the site manager. The second one is what ticked me off. And yes, she was punishing me like a bad parent might a child. Our next story is, need merits to go to prom? Let me help. My youngest is in year 11, UK, last year of high school, and the school is having a prom for the leavers. While I don't agree with yet another Americanism finding its way over here, I know my daughter is looking forward to it now that it's her turn. This year, however, the school changed the rules so that the students have to earn their way to a ticket, with a certain amount of merits given by the teachers. Stupid, idiotic, and frankly unfair. The students have kicked up a fuss, but school management is holding firm on it. The teachers? Not so much. Just yesterday, my daughter was given merits by different teachers because your hair looks great, for the way you walk through that door. and because she gave her friend a high five for getting an answer right. Others have been given merits for equally simple and silly things, so the merits given are overflowing. Guess everyone will get to go to the ball after all. I remember back in the day when I was in high school, I had online friends. So definitely before this post in this circumstance, but I remember a friend who lived in England was having a prom at their school for the last year. Is it really like a newfangled thing, or is it just kind of a regional thing? A user named Lil Ernst left a comment here saying, American here. Question, because I genuinely just learned that prom is an American thing. Before prom, did you guys have any special dances at school? We also have homecoming in the fall and sometimes a winter formal. Our middle schools, ages 11 to 14, sometimes have the occasional dance. Also, I saw a comment say that your students leave school in dribs and drabs because of the way your exams work. Do you have graduation ceremonies or anything like that? Questions out of genuine curiosity. The OP responded, we had a school disco, usually just a local DJ with his turntables playing the same cheesy songs from the last 50 years. Drink was a bottle of pop and a few sweets, and the whole thing cost about £2. Clothes were about whatever your casual clothes were, nothing like it is now. Our next story is, I embarrassed a corporate higher-up today by following his directions. I just wanted to explain a few acronyms in this upcoming story real quick. ETLs means Executive Team Leaders, which is like a very high-ranking manager that oversees stores. The other is U-boat in retail, which is a cart that has two tall handles at either end, literally looks like a U, and sometimes has a few shelves in the middle. Just in case you're curious, I'll put a picture of an example of a U-boat on the screen. I work in retail, I just stock shelves. 3 or 4 people from corporate were with the store director and all ETLs touring the store, and they were in the middle of the main backroom walkway. I backstocked and had trash on my U-boat. It's a lot of styrofoam because I was doing lamps and candles. They were completely in my way. I was pushing the U-boat from behind because technically we were only allowed to push vehicles. We're not allowed to pull them from the front, and I was going to follow every rule we had while the visit was going on. As I move past them, the highest ranking one stops me and says, "Excuse me, can you do me a favor? Can you grab the middle of the vehicle and walk side by side it so you can see?" Then I step out to the side and I look at my vehicle and look back at him saying, How? How can I grab it from the side? There's not a middle shelf on this U-boat. And he stepped over to actually look at my vehicle for once and was like, "Well, would you look at that? It looks like you're missing a few shelves there." So then I'm like, okay, so how do you want me to do this then? And then he told me to grab the top part of the inside of the vehicle. I don't know, it was weird and confusing, and after I did it, I confirmed with him that it is what he wants me to actually do, and he's like, "Yep, just like that." I take a few steps forward, and then the back of it like spins out of control and slams into a flatbed, and then everything flies off onto the ground. All of my trash is just everywhere. I immediately just start picking up everything, and he's like, "I am sorry," and he helps me pick up my trash, and I said, "Yeah, I guess the back room is a little cramped right now because of inventory prep." Guys, like, you literally cannot fit next to a vehicle the way he is saying. It is packed back there. So anyway, I thought this was absolutely hilarious because I proved a corporate guy wrong, literally to his face, just by following his directions. I met with my executive team lead afterwards, and she said she also thought it was hilarious, and she said that the guy talked about how he's super embarrassed now, and he felt bad for me. By the way, after all my trash was picked up, I then just pulled the U-boat from the front like a normal person, and he never said anything to me about it. One of my coworkers said that I should have just kept doing it the way that he told me and repeatedly lost my trash until he would tell me to not do it his way anymore. I wish I would have. Well, unless a field is new or a job or a company is new, generally you want to operate under the idea that the rules were there and the instructions are there because of a long line of, I guess you could say, ancestors testing them out and making sure what works. I mean, as soon as this guy saw that there was no shelf in the middle, they should have just let OP go. I almost wonder if it's like, well, he engaged with OP and he told OP to change something, so they can't just let them go and ignore it at that point. They gotta see it through. A user named Tell Me Some Other Time left a comment saying, Sounds like he made a suggestion, then recognized it was a mistake and apologized and helped you clean it up right away. What a freaking jerk. The OP responded, he was really nice about it, I know. There are plenty of places that have higher-ups that are rude, but I think the funny story nonetheless, because he thought that he knew better, and the solution was to go against policy and pull the vehicle from the front. He realized that the policy doesn't always work out logistically. Like, realistically, I wasn't doing anything wrong, and I was following procedure, but he still had to stop me and change what I was doing. This group of corporate people pretty much stopped every employee that they came across and told them they were doing something wrong. Our next story is, we need to save hours. This was back about 8 years ago when I worked for the Big Green store in the UK. We were going through a belt-tightening period. Sales were down, no recruitment to replace leavers, i.e. circling the drain right before we parted ways with Schmalmart. I had been sent on to nights to evaluate and fix them. Came in for 10 p.m. for shift start and immediately got collared by my line manager, who I had a mutual loathing going on with. He ranted me that I have to cut hours, pick a colleague, he doesn't care who, and send them home. I have a little think about it and pull in my 3 little minions. I explain the demands, but I also tell them that I think this is massively unfair, expecting one person to lose an entire shift. So I said that we would all go home 2 hours early. That would give them the saved 8 hours. We would still manage to get most tasks done, and who wouldn't be happy finishing early, right? So that's what we did. Next evening, store manager pulls me in, asks me what the heck happened. Morning crew turned up and we were all gone, had to pull the AM delivery into the chiller by themselves. So I told him my reasoning. Turns out that the night team wasn't meant to be a part of where the hours were cut. Seems Mr. Line Manager was trying to hit 2 birds with 1 stone. Free up hours for his shift and also get me in trouble for failing my tasks. What actually happened was that my minions pulled together in solidarity, we nailed our crap, and by all being gone the following morning, we drew full attention to the shenanigans. We got apologies, and he got in trouble. I think this is where my lack of knowledge of the Big Green store in the UK is kind of failing me. I'm just wondering, who exactly did OP get apologies from, and who set the store manager being in trouble? Is it like a even higher up corporate thing, or would it be like an owner? A user named Equivalent Salary left a comment saying, malicious compliance followed by a helping of Fallout. The OP responded, oh, it was delicious. I'm a very weird manager in that I'm all about the team. Working together, never expecting my guys to do anything I wouldn't do myself, kick their butts when needed, but I will fight until my last breath when they need protection. Consequently, I end up with a team who have my back, and those guys certainly appreciated my transparency. They outdid themselves that night, we all shared the financial hit, and we stuck a finger up as a group. Another user commented, you actually got an apology at the end? That's rare as rock eggs in corporate. The OP responded, that store manager was cool. I still occasionally hit him up for a chat or advice, same as most of the people I've worked with over the years. If I'm in the wrong, I own it and take my licks. If I'm in the right, or if my people need to be protected, I hold on as best I can. I stayed an extra year beyond my tolerance levels at that job just to play meat shield. I was a walking skeleton afterwards. Our next story is, I can only call a forward? Okay, enjoy the extra work then. Kind of a silly one, but I've worked on and off as a raft guide at various points in my life and was recently retraining on a new river. Day 1, and I ended up with a trainer who I'd been warned was a bit of a hard butt. Start of the day, and he says, okay, for the first half of the day, you can only call the forward command. No turns, no back paddling. You don't get any other commands, just forward. Fair enough. So we get out on the river and I'm in the guide seat. I tell everyone to forward paddle, but the rest of the trip isn't ready to go yet. So I spin us so we're facing upstream and everyone continues to paddle forward. After a while, we get too far upstream, so I spin us around again. The trainer finally turns to me and says, You don't want to tire people out so much. You should pull us over in the eddy and let people rest. I simply responded, oh? Does that mean I'm now allowed to use a command other than forward? He just smiled and said, you can also have the stop command. He and I ended up getting along great the whole rest of the evening. So once again, I think this is where my lack of understanding of rafting in like forward command falls apart, although I can at least apply a little bit of assumption work here. But I actually don't understand what's wrong with giving OP, who apparently had some experience, the ability to call some other kind of command besides forward. I mean, I don't know the other commands, but does it get hairy real quick if OP calls something else? I guess maybe if you don't know the actual layout of the river? A user named M the Strange left a comment saying, as a fellow paddle sports careerist, I have to ask, what grade of water was this on? The OP replied, funny question. The river overall is a class 3. Some people say that there's a small class 4 on one of the sections. This particular trainer said his point of view is that he's training us for not just everyday stuff, but also for high flow days and future guiding on bigger rivers. Our next story is figure it out yourself. I work in a satellite office for a larger parent company. My position is middle ranking, and one of my daily tasks is to process payments that the office receives. I have my own credit card processing account, but I have to use my supervisor's account for mobile check deposits. Why don't I have my own account? I have no idea, because I'm the one handling the money at this office for years. Yes, it's been discussed, but it always becomes a zero priority point. For the past month-ish, I kept getting errors when trying to mobile deposit. I went to the accounting head to ask for help and was told to just go to the bank and deposit the checks myself. I can't do that because I don't have access to my own vehicle, so the checks kept piling up. I asked my supervisor and other staff in the office for help, but no one could help me. When I brought up the issue to the accounting head again, I was told to just deposit the checks myself. Again, can't. And figure it out yourself. On the error message, the bank provides a phone number for you to call in when you're in need of help. I called it in hopes of someone being able to help me and gave them my actual name, not the supervisor's name, aka the one who's actually supposed to be depositing the checks and who the account belongs to, the parent company's account for the main office, for the satellite offices, everything got flagged for fraud because of my call. Everything ground to a halt. No one could use the petty cash checks, deposit checks, use their company credit cards, nothing. The accounting head was screaming mad, literally, about this, and now having to deal with the issue themselves. And I reminded them what I was told and that I was just trying to figure it out myself. Now, I'm not some corporate high-up mogul or big CEO or anything of the sort, but if you have a stack of checks, money just ready to go into the company account, why would you ever tell the person who's processing that, I don't know, figure it out yourself? Don't you like money, big corporate boss man? The last thing you want to do is have checks sitting around waiting to deposit them. If I found out an accountant I had hired had treated things the way this accountant did, I wouldn't try to fire just him, I'd try to fire his whole bloodline. Take a picture of him and plaster it on the wall saying, have you seen this man? Don't allow him on the premises. A user named MacDaddyDC left a comment saying, seems like a stack of undeposited checks with a note should have been left on the accounting head's desk every day. Figured it out. Please deposit appropriately, as I cannot. Another user named Peepaw50 left a comment saying, that's when you say, I'm really good at my job. I'm not very good at doing your job. This next story is, yes, General, no, General. When I was a trooper, many years ago, when you were on guard at the camp's main gate, every person had to be challenged and show their ID. Everyone. In fact, this meant that field officers and generals would drive up and expect the pole to be raised, so they didn't even have to slow down. One guy in our platoon was Trooper Coates Ketsi. Care to guess which country? Coates took life in the army very seriously indeed and followed orders to the letter, which meant that sensible sergeants never put him on watch house duty. until the new guy showed up, demanding Kos do his share on the day the big passing out parade was held. You can see where this is going, can't you? However, as the Brigadier General swept up to the post and Kos stopped him, demanding to see his papers, he shocked us all, complimenting Kos on strict attention to detail and being a conscientious chap. Luckiest soldier I ever met, Kos. A user named AvidLearnerBot left a comment saying, I hate to admit it, but I kind of respect the sheer audacity of challenging a general just because he didn't have his ID ready, even if it made for one of those awkward moments that somehow ends up being a badge of honor. The OP responded, Kos didn't know the meaning of fear. Just one of the many words he didn't know the meaning of. He was brought up on a farm in the Plataland and was practically feral. Dang good bloke with vast, almost unique survival skills, but no social graces and no education other than the Bible. Our next story is no cables? No problem. When I was 12, my mom got an Apple II Plus computer. I set it up for her after carefully reading all the manuals. Back then, manuals were actually useful and contained a lot of good information. The computer had 2 external hard drives, a modem, a monitor, and a printer. Everything was connected with various cables. My mom used it for a couple of days and then said to me in an exasperated voice, "These cables are all over the place and it's driving me crazy. Clean it up so there are no cables." I had explained to her several times that the cables were necessary, but she wasn't hearing it. Okay, I unplugged every cable from every external piece of the computer system and put them in the box. She walked into her den and said, "Now this is what it should have looked like from the beginning. Keep it this way from now on." A few minutes later, she calls me back into the den. "The computer won't turn on." "Of course," I said. "There are no cables. There's no way to get power to the computer, and no way for the computer to talk to any of the other devices." She grumbled for a moment, but then had me reinstall everything, so it worked. Sometimes to get people to understand a concept, you have to give them exactly what they asked for. Now, considering the Apple II Plus was sold in the 1979 to 1982 range, I'm imagining while the concept probably always existed, cable management in a household computer wasn't really much of a thing, per se. I don't know, I could be wrong. Maybe in the late 80s, people had their Windows DOS box totally cable managed and looking spick and span. But I can hear in my head a modern person like Linus Tech Tips or something like that screaming over this. You know, just use some twist ties, tie them down, strap them to the table. They'll look like it's not even there. A user named CoderJoe1 left a comment saying, "Next, remove the fuel tank of her car so she can avoid it ever exploding." The OP responded, "My feet smell like gasoline and the tank never gets full." Our next story is, my boss said to stop putting papers on his desk. Okay. Back in the days before computers, everything was documented with paper. There was no email, no electronic memos, nothing. Everything was typed or handwritten. I was the office manager for a contractor. I was also the payroll department, accounts payable and receivable, accounting, and HR departments. The owner's desk was always a mess. Papers were scattered everywhere. Nobody had any idea what color the top of his desk was. He managed to work like that for years until the day he snapped. One afternoon, I was waiting for him to sign a stack of checks. He was interrupted by an urgent phone call and couldn't find the contract that needed his immediate attention. He stood up and used his arm to swoop every piece of paper from the desk to the floor in front of his desk. It was like watching a ticker tape parade in slow motion. I don't remember ever seeing him so ticked off before. Then he yelled, "Nothing goes on my desk until I clean up that crap on the floor." Okay, funny man. We had 80 employees at the time who were paid weekly. Remember, this was before computers. We didn't allow signature stamps on checks. All checks and legal documents required his original signature. I hated to do it, but orders were orders. I tossed all paychecks, company checks, contracts, phone messages, bids, and contracts on top of the pile of papers on the floor in front of his desk. I have to give him credit because it only took him 2 weeks for his stacks of paper to be in neat, organized piles on his desk, arranged around his desk calendar. Then he said my desk should look as organized as his. I told him to freak off because my chaos was organized inside my head, and if he really wanted it cleaned off, he needed to stop giving me so much work to do. I multitasked before it was a thing, and organizing my desk wasn't included. Edit, just to clarify, his phone was on the credenza behind his desk. It was safe. He signed paychecks and worked on the mountains of papers from the top of the heap down to the bottom of the pile. Anybody else hear this story and think, that manager, be like me for real? It's such a filthy habit of mine. I get like credit card offers constantly, and I'll go and I'll just toss them on my desk. And then once there's like a good 10 letters there, that's when I finally break them out and use the shredder. I have a section off to the side of my desk that's a I'll file these things later section for like important letters I get. God forbid I ever have to explain to people in detail how often I'll have the quintessential bed laundry basket that just has a whole bunch of laundry waiting to be put away. A user named Vindictive Nostalgia left a comment saying, "Where's the malicious part of this malicious compliance? Where's the missed payments, lost contracts, etc. from following his orders? Without that, it just sounds like compliance." VOP responded, "I should apologize for not explaining it better. It was fun watching him hunt for things that needed his immediate attention. We were a union company, and paychecks had to be given to employees by 2 p.m. every Friday at the latest. We had a driver deliver the checks to all of the job sites, and it drove my boss a little crazy when the driver stood outside of the office with his hands in his pockets waiting for signed checks. He owned the company. I stayed with him for 23 years because it was good entertainment." And speaking of good entertainment, if you want to hear some more awesome malicious compliance stories, why not check out that video on the left of the screen right now? Or if you missed my latest video, you can check that out on the right. That said, hopefully this was okay-ish to decent entertainment, and I'll see you all next time with some more stories.